Hello, this is Joe Polish, president of Piranha Marketing and founder of the Genius Network interview series, and you're about to hear one of my Genius Network interviews, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this, and I hope you find it very useful. If you want to find out more information about some of the interviews and resources that can help you in your business, you can go to www.joepolish.com. And we have a Joe Polish Recommends section with all kinds of resources and vendors and services and products that we recommend that can help you in your business. And also for more useful interviews and a whole list of other people that I've interviewed, you can go to www.geniusnetwork.com. Thanks and enjoy the interview.
Hello, this is Joe Polish, and welcome to another Genius Network interview. Today I've got an interview with a guy I've been looking really forward to talking with, Jason Fried. He is the founder, co-founder actually, and president of a company called 37 Signals. It's a privately held Chicago-based company, and they're committed to building the best web-based tools possible with the least number of features necessary. The company 37 Signals products include Basecamp, High-Rise Backpack, Campfire, Tada List, and Writeboard. 37 Signals also developed and open-sourced the Ruby on Rails programming framework. 37 Signals products do less than the competition intentionally. Jason co-authored 3 books, Defensive Design for the Web, Getting Real, and Rework, a New York Times, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and Times of London bestseller. Jason believes there's real value and beauty in the basics. Elegance, respect for people's desire to simply get stuff done, and honest ease of use are the hallmarks of 37 Signals products. So how you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, well, like I said before we started recording, thank you so much for doing this interview. Really looking forward to it. You're a very smart guy. I have not read Defensive Design for the Web, but I have read Getting Real and Rework. Both are phenomenal books. I recommend everybody read these books if you haven't already, and I will recommend that later throughout the interview. I'm going to talk about some of the topics that are in both of these books and just hit you with some questions. So who is Jason, and something I didn't mention on this short bio?
What else am I up to? What else am I doing?
Exactly.
Outside of work, inside of work.
Outside of work. I'd be curious in that.
Sure. Well, I'm someone who's interested in a whole bunch of different stuff. So right now, I've been learning how to play drums recently, which has been really fun. It's the last thing that I've actually learned from scratch, which is something I've been thinking a lot about lately. I haven't really been learning a lot of stuff from scratch since, you get out of college and you learn stuff here and there, but to learn a brand new skill, I'm 36 now, to learn a brand new skill is actually pretty cool, and
right.
I've been doing that with drums.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I got a bunch of other stuff that I do too, but that's kind of my current sort of interest, hobby that I'm really focused on.
Okay, well, let me start with some business questions, and we're going to go into lifestyle stuff too, because I think you have some great philosophies on that. You have a great credo that I think just pretty much sums up what your philosophy is in business, and I believe it to be the core of 37 Signals. And the statement is, it's simple until you make it complicated. So I want to ask you what you mean by that.
Well, I think most things are pretty simple. But humans have gotten really good at making things hard on themselves, and I think we just do it to ourselves. We think things have to be hard when they're not. And in business, I just see this all the time. I see people focused on all the wrong things, worrying about a lot of long-term planning and documentation and trying to, just nail everything way ahead of time. And I think that's just hard, and it's unnecessary. And typically you spend a lot of time worrying about things that don't actually happen anyway. And so that's one example, I think, of worrying about things and making things hard on yourself, when really I think the best way to do it is just kind of make calls on the fly, make things happen as they happen, and not worry too much about what might happen 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or 12 months on the road. That just makes things hard on yourself. So keep it simple, and I think you're just going to be in a better situation overall.
Are you a goal setter? Are you someone that sits down and, what's your idea of planning?
I'm not a goal setter. I have a couple visions for, where I want the company to go and what I want out of my life, sort of, but I'm not really someone who sits down and says over the next 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or 3 years or whatever, I want to be here or there. I just have some, I guess not even, vision's probably the wrong word, it's more about principles. What do I believe in? And those things to me aren't goals so much as they're just kind of a mindset and things to keep in mind whenever I'm working on something.
Now, you've written a really contrarian book on business, Rework is what it's called, and it is truly one of the best books I've read in about 5 years. Love it. I've referred hundreds, if not thousands, of people to read this book at this point. Hopefully everyone will, and one of the main reasons I wanted to do this interview with you is just I really think your message will be very beneficial to a lot of entrepreneurs. Now, have you always gone against the grain in business with some of your philosophies, or were you like this when you were young, or where does this come from?
Yeah, I've always been a little bit like this. It's just, everything I've seen, sort of, I started working when I was 13, so my parents put me to work when I turned 13. I can get a worker's permit, and I started working at the local grocery store, and then I started selling shoes, and I started selling tennis rackets at a local pro shop, and everything that I've seen and everything that I've done, I've just witnessed people trying to make things more complicated than they need to be, or people not speaking the same language as their customers, or having to go through paperwork and all these processes when you really just don't have to. And I just keep seeing all this complexity, and so when I decided that I was going to do my own thing, I was not going to do it the way I was supposed to do it. I was going to do it the way it made sense. And that's where I started forming this philosophy. And this isn't a unique philosophy. A lot of other people believe in this stuff too, but just skipping all the red tape, getting rid of all the stuff you're supposed to do, and instead just do the things that actually matter. And so I've just sort of been refining that as I've been getting older and running a different business, and it's just kind of a work in progress really too. I mean, I have ideas and I have a clear point of view, but I'm very open to making changes and doing things that make more sense, not just doing things that I'm supposed to do because someone else one day, 50 years ago said this is how business should be run.
How do you learn, actually? I mean, what has developed your core philosophies and stuff?
Mostly by doing and trying things out. We're very flexible at 37 Signals. We kind of think of our company as a piece of design, really. And so, we're kind of designers at our core, and when we build products, we iterate on products all the time. So we might add a new feature here, or tweak something there, or change some words over here, or try a new design there. And I think business can be the same way. So I don't think that you have to say, this is our business, and these are our policies, and this is how we do it, and that's that. We're always iterating. So a lot of the things that I believe in today are because I've tried them a few different ways, and I find that the way we're currently doing it works the best. It makes the most sense. It's the easiest to implement. People understand it. It requires the least amount of management. All the stuff that I don't like, whenever I can get rid of that stuff, I think we're in better shape. So it's really just experience, trying things, seeing how it goes, and recognizing that if I try something that doesn't work, I'll try something else and find something that works and keep doing that.
Now, well, tell me a little bit about 37 Signals, how it developed into the company it is today. I think a lot of people may not have any idea what 37 Signals is, and hopefully after this they will. But how did it start? What is it? That sort of stuff.
Sure. So I started the business in 1999, and I had two other partners at the time. And we started out as a web design company. So we were doing work for hire for other companies who had websites or didn't have websites but wanted better websites. And I've always liked design. I've always liked business. And when I graduated college, which was in 96, the Internet kind of was finally just kind of coming out, basically, in 95, 96. And so I put all that stuff together. I said, hey, I like business. I like design. I kind of like computers. I can do this web thing, And so I started doing that freelance, hooked up with a couple other guys in 99 who I knew who were also into this stuff, and we started 37 Signals together. And we started building a nice client base. And we did things differently back then, too. In fact, if you go to 37signals.com/manifesto, you can check out our original site from 99. And back then, most web design firms were all about showing off their work, as they still are today, I suppose, but also really colorful, really bold, really inventive websites that kind of try to showcase their design talent. And we thought we had a lot of talent, but we didn't want to be like everybody else, because when you're just like everyone else, there's no reason for you to exist in many ways. So we wrote, our site was black and white. It was text-based. It was only text-based. We had 37 ideas, and we sold ourselves through ideas, because everyone's got a good portfolio somewhere. Everyone's done good work somewhere, but we felt like ideas were really important. So that's how we started. We built up a great client base. And then around 2003, we got really, really busy doing a lot of work for a lot of clients, and we needed a better way to manage those projects. We were just using email at the time, which is how most people really manage projects. They just shoot emails back and forth. And that's fine for about a week, but then it gets really messy, especially if there's multiple people involved in the project. So we looked around at project management software, and we couldn't find anything that we liked. The big one was Microsoft Project, and I just felt like it was 100 years old. It just felt like it was from the 1900s, the 1800s even. It just felt old. It was solving the wrong problems and wasn't doing what we needed. So we decided to write our own, which we did, and we just used it internally at first. So we used it with our own clients, a way to share to-do lists and schedules and conversations about a project. And it turned out that as we started using it, all of our clients were saying, hey, I need something just like this for my own business. And so the light bulb went off. I've always loved building products and coming up with ideas for products. And so I'm like, well, here's a product. We need it. They need it. Let's put some prices on it and put it out there. And it turned out about a year and a half later, it was doing more business than our consulting business was. So we stopped doing consulting and started focusing exclusively on building this web-based software, Basecamp being our first product, and now we have 6 different products, and that's what we're entirely focused on today.
Awesome. Well, one thing that's really interesting is you and correct me if I'm wrong, you built this without a sales team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, how does something like that happen, and I guess what are the lessons to pull from that?
Sure. So we still don't have any salespeople, never have. Our products are all spread through word of mouth and through just self-service sign-up. So the way we started out was, we were web developers, and we knew a lot of web developers. And so when we launched Basecamp, we told a lot of our web developer friends about it. And it turned out that, if we needed it and they needed it and it solved the right problems, they spread the word. Everyone was really excited about it because it was kind of a new breed of project management and collaboration tool that hadn't really existed before. So when you do something that's new and that's useful, and the useful is really the key word here, not so much new, because new is changing all the time, but useful isn't forever, but it's for a hell of a long time. When you build something useful and then combine it with something new and innovative and the whole thing, the word gets out. And, today especially, the word gets out incredibly fast. I almost feel like if you're good today, you will be noticed. It's impossible not to be noticed today if you're any good. And so the word spread. Our products were collaborative in nature, and that no one ever used them on their own, so they always use them with other people. Whenever other people are involved, they tend to tell other people about them. And, people leave jobs and move to new jobs, and when they move to a new job, they say, hey, I use this other thing at my other job. Can we try it here? And word just spreads. And over the past 6 years, we've now, had about 5 million people have accounts in our products. And the word just continues to spread, but it's all through word of mouth. And we've just made it really easy for people to sign up for our software online. It's very clear. It's very direct. You don't have to call anybody or email anyone. You just sign up. It takes 30 seconds, and you're off and running.
Yeah, and you know what? We use Basecamp, and I first thing I ever used was Todalist, which is like a free app that you guys have just for keeping track of to-dos.
Yep.
And basically, I'd like to ask you about your philosophies on free versus paid for, because I would kind of consider you one of these anti-give stuff away for free people, although Todalist is an app that you guys give away for free.
Yeah, so my feeling with free is that free is okay if you have something else to sell. I mean, I just think of it, like a bakery. You walk into a bakery, and you can't just take a loaf of bread home with you without paying for it, but you could probably have a little free sample, which they have on the counter, and if you like it, maybe you'll buy that loaf of bread. That's how we treat software for the most part. We have a free version of everything that we do, and it's limited, but it's good enough to try, and you can make a decision on whether or not you think it's worthwhile upgrading to a pay version at that point. And we also do have a couple apps like Todalist, like you mentioned, which are completely free, and those are completely free for a few different reasons, but kind of the main reason is, in many ways, it's sort of like, and this sounds like a negative thing, but it's supposed to be a positive thing, it's kind of like a Trojan horse in that, like, you start using Todalist and you really start to like it, and it's kind of this, like, secret way for us to introduce the 37 Signals way of doing things into your business. And you're like, wow, Todalist is pretty great. They also have this thing called Basecamp. Let me check that out. And that's the more, robust version, if you want to use that word, of, a to-do list. And you can add messages and comments and a bunch of other stuff to it. So it's sort of it's an introductory thing, a way to sort of get in the door with people at no cost, but then we have something to sell them. The problem I have with a lot of internet-based businesses and software companies is that they have they give things away for free, but then they have nothing to sell on the back end. So, you can't do that. Eventually, you're going to be out of business. You've got to figure out a way to make money, and I just think selling things is the best way to do it. There's other ways, advertising and all that stuff, but I'm just a big fan of the way people are used to paying. People are used to having things by buying them. You buy your food, you buy your airfare, you buy your taxi, you buy your clothes, you buy your music. Hopefully you buy your music. People are used to buying things that they like, and so I think that's the best way to actually sell stuff.
Yeah, I mean, do you think a lot of companies are completely screwing themselves with the free model?
I do. I mean, look, there's a few that can make it. I just like to look at odds and percentages and that sort of thing. And if you look at it, the odds are just so heavily stacked against you if you're giving everything away for free and trying to generate enough traffic to maybe somehow make enough money off advertising. I mean, it's just so much harder to do that than it is to just make a product that's worth paying for. And the other great thing about charging for things is that it forces you to be good. And to me, this is such kind of an underrated element of charging for something. If you give stuff away for free, no one really cares that much about it, and it doesn't have to be any good because it's just free. But when you put a price on something, whatever it is, $20, $50, $1,000, whatever it is, you have to be better than that price. It has to be more valuable than the price people are paying you. And I think that's a really good, I don't know if the word's constraints or force or something to put upon yourself as a business owner, is to make something that's worth spending on. And that's just one of those great pressures that I think price gives you that free doesn't give you. And I just like it. I like doing business that way.
Yeah, I like it. Great. So let me talk about a couple of other things that are in the book, rework. And one thing that you write about is you're better off with a kick-ass half than a half-assed whole. That's your quote. So what do you mean by that?
Well, I think this is especially relevant to new entrepreneurs or people starting new businesses. They'll have a lot of ideas, and they'll come up with a new product idea, and they'll just, wouldn't it be cool if that we did that? Oh my God, here's a great idea. What if we built this? And these people have, 10, 20, 100 great ideas, great features, great things to do with this product. And I feel like what happens is, if you don't stop yourself, you end up building a half-assed product. And that you try and get all the stuff done, but you can't because there's too many things to do, and it's very hard to do one thing well, let alone 100 things well. And so my feeling is that you're better off cutting your ambition in half, cutting your big idea in half right now. Doesn't mean you can't get there eventually, but cutting it off now, early, so you have half as many things to focus on. And I'd even consider, I'd keep cutting it half, so you just have a few things to focus on. The idea being that, again, like I said, it's hard to do anything well, and if you can just do a few things well, like you're setting yourself up for hopefully a much better product if you just can focus on 2 or 3 or 5 things instead of 10, 20, or 50 things. So that's what that quote's all about. Don't just do everything half-assed. Just pick half and kick ass on that, and then you can finish the second half later on.
Which is great, by the way.
Thank you.
How do you deal with continual ideas in this world that's, I would imagine, ever expansive, where you do have a philosophy about customer feedback and wanting other options added to the software, and I'd like to have you talk a little bit about that. But mainly, how do you keep yourself on track, I guess, without getting distracted?
Yeah, it can be challenging because everyone wants everything. And when you have a lot of people using your software, you have a lot of people with a lot of opinions telling you how it should be and what they need. And we listen to every single request, but there's a big difference between listening and doing. And I think it's very important for any company to listen closely, but to not try and do everything that people want. Because if you do, you just end up with a hugely bloated product that just trends towards mediocrity. And that's just simply what happens when you try and do everything for everybody. I think that's the way it is in every business. If you're a restaurant and you try and have 100 items on your menu, you're just not going to do 100 items well. You're going to do a dozen, 10, 5 maybe, really good dishes. And so the way we look at it is just, we definitely build things based on what customers want, but we try and listen to what they're saying and then interpret that in our own way and not just do exactly what they're saying, because oftentimes what they're saying is something that's not as clear as it could be, or they don't know what's possible, and so they're only able to kind of communicate in their own way, knowing what they know, And it's just incumbent upon the company, I think, to innovate on customers' behalfs and not just doing exactly what they tell you to do. So it takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of thick skin to say no to things and to have, some people yell at you about it. But I just feel like the best things are heavily, the hot word right now is curated, and I don't know if that's the right word, but I'll use it. I mean, you have to curate your product. You have to decide what's in and what's out. And the greatest things are typically created, things go from good to great when you get rid of stuff. And that's just typically my feeling. If you have a book and you keep cutting it down, you keep editing it, you turn good into great. If you're a director, you keep cutting out scenes, you turn a good movie into a great movie. I mean, it's all about that. So you can't just do everything. You got to do just a few things. And it's a challenge, but we're always working on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, a lot of the listeners of Genius Network run businesses online, offline, brick and mortar, and I know there are many that are basically complete workaholics, totally trapped. And I love your views on workaholics and how that affects a company. So I'd like you to give some of your perspective on workaholism.
Sure. So I just think it's a disease, like any ism, pretty much. I'm not saying that you can't pull long hours here and there, or you might have to stay up late a couple times here and there, and especially when you get started, things are a little bit harder. I totally get that, but if you're pulling 60, 80-hour weeks every week, like, you're going to burn out. You're not Superman. You're a human being just like your neighbor and just like everyone else on this planet, and you need to sleep, you need to take time off, you need to think about other things. And that's where you're going to be creative, is when you're exposed to a lot of other stuff and you get to go home and rest. I mean, rest is such an important thing, and sleep is such an important thing. I think it's why people typically come up with good ideas, like, their head hits the pillow and they come up with something, or they come up with something in the shower the next morning. They come up with stuff when they're not thinking about it 14 hours straight, because it's really hard to come up with creative ideas when you've been thinking about something for 14 hours straight. Your brain just doesn't work that way. You need a break. You need to take a walk. You need to go outside. You need to do other things. And I just believe that a really well-rounded, healthy perspective and activity on a variety of different levels is what really helps you come up with creative things, not sitting in the office or wherever you are and working nonstop, head down for 14 hours every day or 10 hours every single day and just busting your ass until you can't keep your eyes open. That's just not the best way to work. So I don't think it's about throwing sheer hours at problems. I think it's just really about giving some problems a break and coming back to them later, and you'll probably come up with something more creative.
Yeah,
That's
I
my
love
take on
it. There's a chapter in Rework, Fire the Workaholics, and do you take that literally? I mean, when you come across someone that just has this need to be working all the time, do you find that to be just a draining, not very effective human being?
Yeah, I mean, we typically don't hire people like that, so I haven't had to fire anybody because of that reason. But you can kind of tell, and when people do, I mean, we do have people who work for us who work more than others for sure, and some people, you can just tell though when they get tired. And one of the things we encourage people to do when they get tired, and when we notice they're getting tired, is we tell them to stop working. Like, there are very, very, very few things that need to get done by 11 p.m. at night. You can get stuff done at 9 a.m. the next morning or 10 a.m. Like, there's just very, very few things that are that time sensitive that they must absolutely get done. I mean, if there's a big problem and servers are down or something, okay, I get that. That's like, you got to do what you got to do to keep the servers up and fix things. But like, a lot of other problems are not like that. And so when we just see people working too much or getting caught up in working too much and trying to get stuff done, we'll tell them to take a break or take even a few days off or whatever, just to cool down and get their bearings and get back to center. So that's kind of our take on that.
Yeah, I have a friend that has this great line that time to quit working is when working is no longer working. And I think a lot of people get to, they hit a threshold where they're just, they're busy, they're maybe doing something, but they're really not accomplishing much of anything. And
I think that happens a lot. You're just kind of putting in the hours, but your hours are like just not productive. You're putting in 3 hours, and you're not getting as much stuff done as you could if you were rested and you put an hour in. I mean, that's really, I think, what it comes down to. It's not just about these sheer hours. That's just not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, well, I want to ask you about some rituals that you have. You're in a business that is very obviously computer and technology intensive. How do you protect yourself from electronics? I mean, do you have a method of how you respond to email? How frequently are you? I mean, what is your checkout where you turn the stuff off and stay away from it? I mean, do you have any?
Yeah, that's a good question actually, because that's a big problem today, and I'm struggling with it myself. My inbox right now is like 115 emails, and that's just not acceptable. I gotta work on that. So a couple things I have done recently though is I used to have like an RSS newsreader, and I would have it ping me when new articles are up on different blogs and news sites, whatever. I just threw that out. I don't use that anymore. And one of the reasons why is because those things typically have counters on them. It's like a red number comes up, 128 or 325 or something. It's telling you how many things you haven't read yet. And that's software that pesters you. And I try and get rid of that stuff out of my life. So I don't have a newsreader telling me how much stuff I've missed. And my email app, it's open all day, but I used to have a counter on it as well, and it would tell me, there's 24 unread emails or whatever. And I've turned that off recently. And so I just check it periodically throughout the day. And again, there are very few things that need to be responded to immediately. I do have too many things in my inbox that I haven't gotten to, and part of that's because I've been traveling a lot and it throws me off a bit. But getting rid of all these indicators of everything you're missing has really helped calm me down. I think it's really as simple as that. Like, software should not be saying, should not be tapping you on the back every 10 seconds saying, hey, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this, you're missing all this. Because that's just going to make you anxious and stressed out, and a lot of the stuff's just not important anyway. I mean, it's not important what this blogger said right now. It just isn't. So it does not deserve a big red star on my computer telling me you're missing this. So that's one of the ways I've been working on getting rid of this stuff.
I love a couple of things you said. Get rid of things that pester you, and get rid of indicators that you're missing stuff. Because it's kind of like, let's set it up so I can be continually annoyed by these electronics that are reminding me of all the shit I'm not keeping up with, which is good.
Right. This stuff is generally not that important. That's the thing. It's like the importance level is very low, but the annoyance level is very high, and that's kind of a weird combination. And when you encourage your computer to annoy you about things that aren't important, then you're like really in a bad spot. So I've been just working on getting rid of those things, and it's definitely helped me quite a bit.
Yeah. How do you determine what is important? I mean, in your world at 37 Signals, your workflow, I mean, what is important? How do you make that determination?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good question. Well, all your questions have been good so far, by the way. Whenever people say that, I'm always like, wait a second, what about the other questions? I don't really have a good answer for it, though. It's kind of a little bit of an art, I guess. It's definitely not something I can replicate or put into a series of steps. A lot of it has to do with simply what I'm interested in right now. So if I'm working on a product, or one of the teams at our company is working on a specific feature or something, and I'm really kind of into that, then that becomes what's most important to me right now. We're actually currently building out a new office space. We've been sharing an office for the past 7 years with another company, and we're finally getting our own space. And that's been really important to me. So I've been putting a lot of energy and attention into that process, and putting a few other things aside. So my attention is variable. This week I might be into that. This week I might be into that, or this, or whatever, and it kind of moves around quite a bit. And then of course there's different people that I find to be important that I have to pay more attention to than others, and all that sort of stuff too. So it is sort of a feel, and sort of what I think I could be good at right now is sort of where I try and put my attention. And that does move around quite often.
Going off the you're better off with a kick-ass half than a half-ass whole. I've heard you say in a couple of videos. There's a couple of speeches that you've given that are online that are great. The one that Think Big, I think is what it was.
Big Think, actually, I think is what it was.
Big Think, yes. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, Big Think. And it's on the 37signals.com website. People can find it there. But you basically talk about if the bed in a hotel is, a crappy bed, everything else about the experience totally sucks.
Yeah.
Just getting the basics right.
Yeah, that's something we're really focused on, is just nailing the basics. There are lots of products that compete with ours that do a lot more than ours, and we're proud to say that our products do less than the competition. But we think that we do the basics better. And I think ultimately people really care more about the basics than anything else. And so, like the example you just cited is like you go to a hotel and they got a fancy TV and they got a great looking furniture and they got, everything's looking good, and then you get on the bed and it's like stiff or the bathroom's cramped or like that's the stuff like that you use in a hotel room.
Right.
Use the bed, use the bathroom. If the water pressure's crappy, if the water pressure's crappy, nothing else matters. Things like that. There's all these little tiny things that really matter, and a lot of stuff that doesn't matter at all. And we're just trying to stay as focused as we can on the little things. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I like Southwest Airlines a lot. I feel like they get the basics right. For me at least, they've been on time more than any other airline I've ever flown. I feel like their fee structure and their prices are right. I don't feel like they're gouging anybody. They don't feel like they're gouging me. I just changed a flight recently. There's no fees for changing flights. Like all the little things that really piss you off about airlines, they don't piss you off in that same way. I mean, there's other things they do, like without the seat assignments and all that kind of stuff, which can annoy people. But I mean, even more fundamentally, they have one type of plan. They only fly the 737, which means that they're typically more on time for that reason. All the mechanics can work on the same planes. All the pilots can fly the same planes, and all the crews can work on the same plane. All that stuff just simplifies everything drastically and allows them to, I think, run at a more efficient level than having to worry about 4 different plane models. And this pilot can only fly this kind, they can't fly that, and this crew member can't work. All that stuff complicates stuff. So I think they're just kind of a great model of nailing the stuff that really matters to their business. And to the customer experience, and leaving a lot of the other stuff, like they don't have in-flight entertainment, and they don't serve food, and all that other stuff, which people hate the food anyway. So it's great that they don't serve what people hate. I mean, those simple things really, I think, add up with Southwest.
You're absolutely right. I actually was sitting next to a Southwest pilot on a United flight once, going to Chicago, which is where you're based. And I asked him. I had a conversation with him about that. I said, "Why do you guys think you do so well?" And he said, "He goes, we only fly one plane, so when they're filling it up with any sort of equipment, it's always the same. We don't have to inventory extra stuff. It just keeps it real simple." And whenever there's been conversations about should we start serving salads, they're like, "No, we don't. We just serve peanuts. That's it. We don't. It's all we give out. That's not the business we're in. A business we're in is to get people from here to there as quickly and as inexpensively as possible." And absolutely, because the MO for most airlines is literally, we're not happy till you're not happy.
Right. It's totally true. That's what it feels like, at least.
Totally. No, that's great. Well, let's talk about a chapter in Rework, which is meetings are toxic. And I think, like you, I hate meetings. It always feels like I'm in quicksand when I even the thought of going to a meeting. And so why do you say that meetings are toxic, considering, most companies that are so built around quote-unquote meetings?
Yeah, I think they're toxic for a variety of reasons. First of all, I think most things can be decided without getting a bunch of people together. Meetings to me are, it's not, when I say meeting, I don't mean like 2 or 3 people kind of, huddling up and making a decision. I'm talking about this department, that department, and let's pull this person over, and there's 8 or 9 or 10 people in something. Like that to me is a meeting. And if you just really think about what you're doing, when you do that, you realize that you're probably making really bad decisions. First of all, it's very expensive. I don't think people think about the true cost of meetings very often, but it's very expensive to pull. Let's just pick a number. Let's say 10 people. Pulling 10 people off of their work for an hour each, that's a lot of time and money you just spent right there. And it's not even just that hour that's missing. It's the mental cost of switching tasks. I mean, to stop what you're doing, to go into a meeting that probably doesn't matter, and then get back into your work later. It's more like 90 minutes of wasted time at least. So that adds up pretty quickly. I don't think people typically are prepared for a meeting anyway. I mean, you're supposed to think about things first, or read this or whatever. And people are busy doing other stuff. They're not busy preparing for meetings. So you pull people into a meeting, and they're probably not even ready for it anyway. The amount of information that's transferred back and forth is really small considering the amount of cost and time. And all these things. I mean, and typically the other thing about meetings is I find that they just sort of procreate, and that, one meeting always leads to another one, and the next meeting's about the one you just had or the one that's coming up. And it feels like people should be making much smaller decisions more frequently and not having to have these big meetings, because it seems like meetings are typically had to discuss bigger things. And I think if you just start chopping these bigger things into smaller things, like someone can just make a call and run with it and move on. And if it's the bad decision, you go back and you fix it because it's small. It's not a big deal. But these big decisions are always mired with meetings, and I think that's one of the problems with them is that people are trying to make too big decisions, and they need to get everyone's buy-in and all that crap, and it's just so unproductive. And I don't think it's really in line with being an efficient company.
I mean, do you think people that want to call meetings all the time, basically, it's kind of like a cop-out for doing real work?
Well, I think the problem is that the people who call meetings aren't the people who are doing the work. The people who are doing the work are doing the work. People who are calling the meetings are the managers, because that's what they do. A manager calls meetings, and a manager talks, has to get an overview of what everyone's doing and has to be involved in everything. And so the only way they know how to do that typically is to call a meeting. So I kind of don't blame, I blame them because I think they should be smarter than that, but that's sort of their job. So they're kind of doing their job, but the makers, the people who are actually doing the work, they don't call meetings because they're actually trying to do the work. And they realize how unproductive meetings are, and so they don't call them. They just do the work. And so I think there's a big difference between the maker's schedule and the manager's schedule. Very different things, very different needs, and I think they kind of headbutt at these meetings. The problem is that the managers, of course, have precedence or take their schedule takes precedence, and so meetings are the things that happen, and I don't think anyone who's actually doing the work is very happy about them.
Do you think companies should be without management?
No, I think management in itself can be good if it's the right kind of management. I'm not one of these people who's like, don't do this or don't do this ever. It's more like let's look at these things and be smart about it. So when I say don't ever have meetings, I really typically don't say it that way. Sometimes I say it for effect, I guess. But we meet occasionally. And when I mean that, I mean like a couple times a year, maybe 3 times a year. We might have something called a meeting. And so infrequently, I think they can be beneficial. It's just like when you do it every Monday morning or something, or all the time, people just can't get any work done. So I think management is another thing like that, where, you as a manager, you can jump in, and I have to jump in occasionally and make some calls quickly, or solve a problem or diffuse an issue. But most of the time, I try and give everyone who works with me, control over their own work and making their own decisions. And I feel if you don't do that, if you're micromanaging, you just end up, removing all the soul from somebody, and they are afraid to think and make decisions, and they can't do anything without relying on you. And so I think the micromanagement side of things and the petty sort of management side of things is really dangerous. But I think, good management, to me, is mostly about, it's like that, I don't forget how the saying goes about government. Like some people, I'm a bit of a libertarian is sort of my general point of view, like kind of stay out of my business. And I just like, the best government is the one that governs least or something like that. Like, it's always about a balance, though. It's not about no government. It's about let's be wise about it, and let's do this and do that. Let's not try and do too much. And I just feel like there's that balance, that delicate balance that has to be struck at a company about micromanaging versus not managing at all. It's somewhere in the middle. I just feel like a lot of managers that I've heard about, maybe I'm just hearing about the bad ones, but people feel micromanaged and overmanaged, and I think that's bad.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. And I mean, I've heard you talk about let people be managers of one.
Yeah.
And I tend to be a person that really gets annoyed with having to work with anyone that's not intrinsically motivated, where they're constantly having to be told what to do and waiting. They're just not resourceful, and they.
Yeah, that's so irritating, isn't it?
Oh my God. Yeah, it drives me nuts because I consider myself a pretty damn resourceful person, and how on earth people can just sit around waiting to be told what to do when there's just, open your eyes.
Yeah.
So when you talk about people managing themselves, do you think that's something that can be learned, or that you need to find people who just naturally get things done? What do you think about that? Because I really what it leads to is your hiring process. Because I'd like to hear you talk about people managing themselves, and then how do you find them?
Well, I think certain people are definitely better at that than others. I think just about every skill can be learned, but some people just do have a knack for things. Some people are just better at other things than other people, for sure. And so we tend to try and find people who are really autonomous, who are able to make decisions on their own, who enjoy working on their own. I don't mean like in isolation, but people that don't need to say, what's next for me? What do I need to do now? So you kind of look for those people. But I also think that a lot of businesses and managers sort of neuter people who are like that, but they sort of neuter them. And by micromanaging them and making them, require them, I should say, to get approval for every last thing. And then at a certain point, people just stop thinking and stop caring because they know whatever they say is going to be wrong or someone's going to come in and change it. And I struggle with that sometimes with design because I care so much about design that sometimes I'm probably a little bit overbearing on my, related to my opinion about someone else's design that's working at the company. And I have to pull back on that sometimes because at a certain point, if you criticize too much about something, like the other person sort of shuts down and stops taking risks and chances, and so you have to be very careful about that. It's sort of an innate skill some people have, and then other people I think can learn it. But I think that anyone can ultimately sort of destroy that in somebody if they do have it by micromanaging and forcing them to do things a different way and do it your way only, and then they just kind of lose that will to live or they lose that will to work, to work creatively after a certain point.
Right. Well, now, how do you guys go about hiring people?
It depends who they are. Programmers, we typically hire. Well, we always hire programmers, I should say, who work on open source projects. And for those who are listening who don't know what open source is, it's basically, I'm actually kind of bad at explaining it myself because it's sort of very obvious but also very complicated. It's basically a bunch of people working on software together on a volunteer basis. The code's available for anyone to tweak and adjust and make changes to. It's not owned by a company. It's not proprietary. It's just kind of open. And so we tend to hire programmers who work in the open source world because first of all, they love programming. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it for free. They love contributing to projects, which is important. They like to work with other people, many people they've never met before. And all those qualities, I think, are really important. Plus, maybe the most important thing, you can actually look at a programmer's code. You can look at their work because it's all open. Unlike, if you try and hire someone who worked at Microsoft and they said they worked on this product, you'll never get to look at their code because it's all proprietary. It's all, and I understand that. But you can't really look at their work. You have to look at the sort of product of their work, but you don't know who else worked on it. And it's very important, I think, to see a programmer's code. So open source allows us to be able to do that, which is really, really good. For designers, we tend to look at people who have really nice personal sites. So they might work at a company, but they love design so much that they spend a lot of effort on their own personal site. That just, again, shows me a level of interest in design. But also in design, it comes down to a lot of problem solving. How can someone take this problem and make it better, solve it in a clear manner? And that comes out of just looking at their work and asking them why. Why'd you do it like this? Why is this the solution? Like, what else did you think about when you did this? Really trying to get into their thought process. That's super important to us. We also tend to hire good writers, or try to hire good writers. I think writing is really important and says a lot about somebody. It's kind of a detail-oriented thing, and I think if they're a good writer, they're probably a pretty clear thinker. So we look at things like that. We also tend to try, if we can, to try employees out for a period of time before we hire them full-time, just to make sure that they like us and we like them, and that we're all sort of on the same page. Because it's hard to really know until you're actually truly working with somebody if you're going to get along. And if it's the right fit. So we tend to try and do that too, either for sometimes just a week at a time or hopefully a month at a time if possible on a contract basis, and see how things go.
Gotcha. Well, and I've heard you talk about it, questions like, I think in Getting Real, where you say to ask yourself, how can we do this with 3 people instead of 10, more of your do less sort of philosophy. So you really keep a streamlined sort of business, and I'd like to have you talk a little bit about that, because I think some people, many companies suffer from let's just staff up like crazy,
right?
And you're the polar opposite of that.
Yeah, I know we're sort of in a tough time economically, in the country, and unemployment's high, so it's kind of tough sometimes to talk about hiring because a lot of people are out of work. But the way we typically do it is we don't hire very often. So we're 20 people now at the company. We could have, our revenues could support many times that, but we've chosen not to have more people. And there's a bunch of reasons why. I can go to a couple of them. I mean, I think when you have too many people around, you end up inventing work for them to do.
Yep.
And I think that's a big problem in a lot of companies. They're doing a bunch of stuff that doesn't matter. And I think if you look at a lot of companies, they have a couple big hits, a couple big winners, and then a lot of loser stuff going on, but the winners keep the losers afloat. So, I mean, you can look at big companies. I mean, Microsoft's an example. And Microsoft's wildly profitable, so they know what they're doing. But they basically make money from two things, Windows and Office. And a lot of other stuff they do is kind of just they lose money on it, or they break even, or whatever. And it's not really important, but they have, 40 or 50,000 people there, and they're all working on stuff even though it doesn't really matter, and they don't really need to do it. If Microsoft cut 50% of their product line, their margins would go up, their profits would not go down. All the good things would be happening, but they've got a lot of people, and so they're working on stuff. And so companies tend to invent work to keep people busy, and I just don't want to be a company like that. I want everyone to be working on meaningful stuff. I mean, I think it's insulting to put someone to work on something that doesn't matter. I couldn't imagine hiring people and saying, here, do a bunch of stuff that we don't really need you to do. That just seems like the worst way to treat an employee. So we tend to just hire only after it hurts. Like, right now, we could use a few more people. We're understaffed in a few areas, but I'd rather feel that pain for a while before we hire somebody than to hire prematurely and get too many people or staff up to some level because we think we might anticipate needing them down the road. So we're very careful about that.
Yeah, that's great. I love what you just said. It's insulting to put people on work that doesn't even matter. One of my favorite Peter Drucker quotes is, there's nothing more useless than doing really well that which need not be done at all.
Yep, I love that quote.
Yeah, and I mean, so many people that, that's what they do. They might do a really good job on, like, nonsense. I mean, it just, in the scheme of things, it makes no difference. And I've had a few people that I've run across that are starting businesses and whatnot, and that used to have a job or a career, but they are now, the industry kind of disappeared or really dried up as a result of, the recent economic situation. Mm-hmm. And I've been telling them, read Rework. I mean, if you're going to go start a business, man, this is the way to do it. This gives you an opportunity to go ahead and build something. And no matter what organization someone's working for, I mean, this sort of advice that you give and in your book, I think, is crucial.
Thank you.
Now, in my company, Piranha Marketing, we talk about creating an ELF business using ELF marketing, which is my kind of little acronym for easy, lucrative, and fun. I love it. I always say you can have an ELF business, which is easy, lucrative, and fun, or you can have a half business, which is hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating.
I love that. That's good.
And so it works. And I always try to use that as my filter system whenever I get involved with people, projects, relationships. I'm like, is this going to be ELF or is this going to be half? Because you can have a hard, annoying, lucrative and frustrating business. A lot of people make a lot of money, but they're prisoners of their own creation. And in your company, 37 Signals, it seems to me like an ELF business. I mean, you make great money with few people and at least a lot fewer than some of the larger corporations in your space. And so why do you think you succeeded in this area where so many others haven't?
Well, part of it might have been just being there at the right time at some degree. And we kind of started this web-based software stuff kind of early. But I'm not going to give that all the credit because I do think we do good work and our products are good, and I think we have good people, and that has a lot to do with it too. We're very focused on just doing trying to get the basics right. Again, it's like you said, you can make things hard and frustrating, and all the other words you used. And I think that's typically the way people go because I feel like they either feel like they need to prove themselves by solving really hard problems, or they just need that mental challenge or something, or they think they're not good enough if they only solve simple problems and all that. I've just thrown all that away. I mean, I think it's great to solve simple problems. Most people's problems are pretty simple. Simple things like how do I share a to-do list with somebody? That's a simple problem. How do I share a design with somebody and get their feedback on it? I mean, these are the problems that people really have. It's these simple problems, and we just have set out to solve those, which makes it easy for us. Although they're not always easy to solve because you have to think hard about how to make them easy, but ultimately they're easy problems, and we enjoy it. It's lucrative because our company is small. Our headcount's pretty low, and our margins are healthy, and our costs are low, and all that stuff. And it's fun because we do it our own way, and we're not a slave to anybody. We don't owe anybody anything. I mean, we owe our customers a good product and everything, but we don't have VCs behind us. We don't, we're not, when you make your own money, you kind of own your own schedule, you own your own time, you own your own business, and I think that's a big part of it too. A lot of folks, especially in our world, they go out and they get money up front, they raise a bunch of capital up front, and right when you're doing that, you're renting time. You don't have your own time anymore, you're renting time.
Right.
And when that money runs out, your lease runs out, basically, and you're done. But when you kind of charge for things and you make your own money, I mean, you're in charge of your schedule, you own it. You can do whatever you want. You can take as much time as you need. You can, as long as you're making money and you have revenue coming in the door and your expenses are lower than that, you own everything. You own your own time, and you can decide what to do, how you want to do it. And that's how we have fun with it, because we don't have those pressures. We're not like, man, this investor needs to get out in 2 years, or this investor's, asking us for this, that, and the other. We just don't have those situations, so we can have fun with it and do it our own way.
Yeah, I was talking to a gal about 2 weeks ago that was talking about how she's got this plan together. She's going to go out and get a bunch of investors to raise a bunch of money, and I'm sitting there listening to her, and I said, you really got to go read Rework and really, pay attention to this, getting money from other people, because it's true. I mean, I think people should rely more on wit and talent and less on money. And when you get money from other people, you have someone to answer to, and people are promiscuous. Yep. When it's someone else's money, and it's just,
sure.
I mean, it's never been something that I could quite, grasp. But
of course, I will say this though too, that there are certain situations where you probably do need outside capital. If you're starting a pharmaceutical company, or you're building a factory or an airline, okay, that, those are exceptions to the rules. But most people today, I think, are building, technology-based businesses or service-based businesses, or restaurants require investment. I don't want to belittle businesses that truly do need money because they have capital expenses, but so many businesses that get money today are the ones that don't have these expenses. I mean, so much venture capital is raised by technology companies with virtual products and servers that don't cost anything, and the only real expense is our people, and they hire too many because they've got the money. And so, I do understand that some businesses need it, but a lot of businesses that raise money just simply don't need it.
Yeah, I agree. So now, since I'm in the marketing business, I got to ask you something about marketing.
Sure.
You write about marketing not being a department, that it is everything. And so how would you define marketing?
Yeah, the point there is like, I just have a lot of friends who work in companies, and they talk about the marketing department, the marketing people, and all that, and I find that to be so wrong, because to me, every single thing is marketing. Every phone call you make, every email you send, every error message in your product is marketing. Every touch point, although that's a little buzzwordy, but everything that someone interacts with your product is marketing. So I feel like when you think about your business as having a marketing department, you're kind of missing the point, and you're sort of throwing all that stuff over the wall to someone else to deal with, But when you realize that marketing is every single thing that you're doing, every interview you give, every whatever it is, every word on your website is marketing, and like every conversation you have. And when you think about it that way, I hope you tend to be more careful about it and do a better job with it, because it's not just something that other people in your business take care of. And that's kind of my point of view on that.
Cool. I don't even know if there's a simple answer to this one, but it just occurred to me while I was talking with you, knowing, you starting out at building, designing websites. In 1999, you started this company, and I have so many people that come up and ask me, how do I start an internet business? How do I build a website or like a web app from mobile, now with iPhones and iPads and all the mobile devices? What the heck would you say to someone that says, my website's no good, I need to get a different website? There's so much to that. What would you tell them?
Yeah. Well, the thing that I recommend people do, if they have something already, is instead of trying to redesign it and like reprogram it and all the hard stuff, I would just say first thing you should do is rewrite it. And that's not always easy either, but I think it's the cheapest way of making having the biggest impact. I just think copywriting is just such an underrated thing, and if you can write the site over and make it really clear for people so they understand what you're doing, that's I think the biggest benefit you're going to have, the biggest return. I mean, I just see so many sites, and this is really bad in the corporate world especially. People spend millions and millions on the design of sites, and you go to the site and you don't understand a damn thing. I don't know what they do. I don't know what makes them any different. I don't know what their point of view is. I don't know what they'd say no to. Like, I don't know anything about this company because everyone's a full-service solutions provider that provides the global services to the Fortune. I mean, none of this stuff means anything, yet these sites are just filled with it. And so I think if you can be clear and really concise about what you believe and what you do and what your company stands for and what your products actually, what benefits they provide, you have such a leg up on everybody else that's wasting time on pixels and colors and shapes and navigation and all the other stuff that's good to have but doesn't matter as much as a clear message. So that's always my response to people is try and be clear, rewrite stuff so it makes sense, and that's probably the biggest return you're going to have on your site.
You know, that's great, and I'm such a huge believer in copy. I think copy is everything. Copy is the oxygen that makes all of your marketing work. It's that important. And I mean, on page, let's see, I have a post-it note here on in Getting Real. You have a chapter called "What's the Big Idea?" and you say your vision should be brief. A sentence should be enough to get the idea across. Here's the vision for each of our products. In Basecamp, you say, project management is communication, backpack, bring life's loose ends together, campfire, group chat over IM sucks, ta-da list, competing with a post-it note, and write board, which is spelled W-R-I-T-E, board, word is overkill. And, I mean, it's if people check out 37 Signals, I think they can see everything that you just talked about. Now, the other part of that, starting an internet business, what would you say to someone on how to start an internet business, what to do first?
Well, it's hard to answer that because it's so general a question. I mean, the first thing I would say is, what are you doing? Forget the internet or the whatever. Like, why are you doing this at all? Do you have a problem that you're trying to solve, and then you realize other people have that same problem, or are you just trying to make money? I mean, it all depends on kind of do you care about this problem? I think those are the questions to ask before. Do I start this online or offline or whatever? As far as if you do have all that stuff nailed down, and I would recommend, looking for a web designer who shares your point of view on things. Not someone who's just all about fancy stuff and the latest technology, but like really about the basics. Someone who understands words, someone who understands what you're trying to get across. Someone who understands a website doesn't have to be 20 or 50 or 100 pages. It can be 1 or 2 or 3. Someone who sort of gets what you're all about and what you're trying to do and why these things are important. I think that's really an important thing. I mean, there's so many web designers out there. There's millions and millions of them. I may have exaggerated that, but let's just call it hundreds of thousands of them. And there's all sorts of different people out there who do this work, and you just got to find someone who shares your same point of view, or whatever your point of view is. That's what you need to do. You can listen to my point of view, or you can come up with your own. Whatever it is, you got to find someone who's on the same page as you. Otherwise, you're going to end up with something you don't like, something that doesn't solve the problems that you think you need solved. I've seen this so many times. I've had lots of friends who've tried to start businesses online or just any sort of business, and they spend a bunch of money with a consultant of some sort, and at the end of the day, they have nothing. Like they have something, but it's like not at all solving any real problems. It's not at all doing what they wanted. Now they're out $10,000 or something, and they're basically at the same exact point they started at, but they have $10,000 less in a website that doesn't work. So you got to find someone who understands what this stuff's all about. I don't have I can't tell you to go in any one place to find that. I mean, we have a thing called Sortfolio, SORTFOLIO.com, which is a listing of website designers, and you can look at their work and check out their sites. But ultimately, you still have to talk to these people and find out, do these people care about the same things I care about and share the same point of view that I have?
Well, you know what, that was a fantastic answer because I get it all the time, and I'm always kind of, it is such a general question, and that's why I kind of said, I don't know if there's an easy way to answer these sorts of things, but that helps, and so sortfolio.com. But really, I think even reading your book, Rework, is a great starting point when anyone, and I, is going to start a business, and I think people really need to take the word internet out of it because starting a business is starting a business, and I think if you at least start with the right foundation and the right thinking, no matter what you go into, makes it infinitely higher chance of success. So I'm going to tell all of our listeners right now that they really need to go online and order Rework. It is an awesome, awesome, awesome book. and you can pretty much get it anywhere. But I wanted to ask you, is there any specific place on where to order that you would recommend other than Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whatever?
Yeah, I mean, whatever the usual suspects are, it should be in all the local bookstores too. And if you go to 37signals.com/rework, we have a list of all the online booksellers that carry it, the big ones at least. And, buy it wherever whoever you want to support. If it's a local bookstore, or if it's a big store like Barnes & Noble or Amazon, up to you. Same book, no matter where you get it.
Yep. And 37 Signals has lots of tools that, not lots, just a handful, actually, but they're really easy, simple, useful tools that I think would make any of our listeners' business lives infinitely easier if they start using them. So can you maybe give a summary of some of the products, Basecamp,
Sure.
Backpack, Campfire, what they do, and how people can actually start using them?
Sure, I'll give you the top four. So Basecamp's number one. That's our longest or our oldest product and our most popular product. It's a project management / collaboration tool. Simply, it means you can share messages and comments and have conversations with people you're working with. You can share files back and forth. You can share to-do lists and assign responsibilities. So you could say, Joe, you have to do this, this, and that by this date. And, now there's some accountability. You can set up milestones. So this is due on this date, or we have a client meeting at this time, things like that. But, again, the very simplest version of all those tools, because a scheduling tool could do a million things. Ours just does a couple things, and it's really the things that you want to do. So that's Basecamp. Highrise is our other product that's really popular right now, especially. Highrise lets you keep track of who you talked to, what you said, what they said, and what to do next. So it's sort of like an online contact manager. Some people might know it as CRM. But again, it's getting back to the very basics about what this is all about. And it's really, for example, after this conversation, I'm going to go to my Highrise account, pull up your page that I created for you, and log the conversation. So I know when I talked to you, what we talked about, and if there's any follow-ups, like, hey, I should follow up, in 2 weeks, or I'm expecting a follow-up in a week, and if I don't get it, I should get back in touch with this person. Keeping this conversation log of everyone you've talked to is really handy because a lot of people simply aren't prepared anymore because they talk to so many people and interact with so many folks. They don't remember who they talked to, when it was, and what they said, and that's the problem that Highrise solves. Campfire is our sort of real-time group chat tool. And what that basically means is it's like people use instant messaging all the time. I use it all the time. It's great for one-on-one conversations, but it's not very good for groups. And Campfire is built exclusively for groups to communicate online in real time, like an IM client, but it actually works on the web, so you don't have to have, you don't have to worry about if someone's using AOL or Yahoo or MSN or any of that crap. You just go to a website, go to a URL, and just in your browser you can chat with other people in real time and share photos, images, code if you're a programmer, video, anything like that, and share that in real time. It's a great way. It's actually the only way we've ever figured out how to run our business the way we run it, is everyone's in Campfire all day long. We're having conversations, sharing stuff back and forth, asking questions, getting answers, and then moving on. Plus, the great thing about Campfire is that everything is transcripted. So every conversation that we've ever had as a company since 2006 is available for us to search and retrieve and look up, and all that stuff's there. So, if you miss a day of work or a week or whatever and you come back, I can scroll back through the last few weeks and see all the stuff that we talked about at the company, so I'm back up to speed. And then lastly is Backpack. Backpack is what people would call an intranet, basically a way to share information internally in your company. All the little loose ends, there's a note about this here, and we have a calendar there, and we need to share this file, and, hey, where do I get the healthcare insurance form? And, hey, we have a new employee, they need to fill out the 401k form, where's that? All that stuff that's typically like, either stored on this computer or on the bulletin board in the hallway, or all that crap that's sort of everywhere can go into Backpack and keeps it really organized and centralized in one place so everyone can get to it. So those are our four main products, and you can just go to 37signals.com. They're all clearly described at the top of the screen. You don't have to go hunting for them. You can click on any one of them to go to the specific site, and you can go and sign up for them in about 30 seconds each. And they range anywhere from the free versions, all the way up to $149 a month. Most people are on the middle plan, so like $49 a month is enough for just about any small company to run, their entire small company per product. If you manage projects, Basecamp's, $49 a month, and you're running all your projects through that. And if you want to use Highrise, it's $49 a month, and It's affordable. There's no contracts. It's all month to month, so you can use it for 3 months and quit. And we'd never charge you a sign-up fee or termination. None of that stuff. You can use it as you go, pay as you go, and it's easy on, easy off. You can export your data if you don't want to use it anymore. All that stuff. That's pretty much the quick spiel on our products and how to sign up for them.
I like it, and I really, I didn't want to just have you mention that for the, just appreciative purposes of thanks for doing the interview. Now talk about your products. I mean, I really believe that everyone that's listening, you would be greatly enhanced in your capabilities by using the tools at 37 Signals. So I encourage you to go use them, and even if you want to try something cool, those of you that are actively involved in taking notes from this interview, go enter all of the to-dos you got in a to-do list, which is free on 37signals.com, and boom, you instantly have it stored for you forever. And any famous last words, Jason? I mean, I'd love to do a follow-up interview with you in the future if you're open to it. However, any famous last words from here regarding rework or anything that you would give some sage business advice on?
First off, thanks again for having me, and I'd love to do another interview down the road if there's more to talk about. My general thing is, getting to rework. Which a lot of this call was sort of about, or this talk was about. The thing about the book that I think is really important, besides simply the ideas in it, which I think are all important, is the fact that we wrote this book so it can be easily absorbed. You can read this book in 3 hours. This is not one of those business books you're going to struggle with for 2 weeks and probably never finish. I mean, this is what always happened to me, is I would start business books. I'd get about 100 pages through, and I'd be like, well, I've got 250 pages to go. I already feel like I know what this guy's trying to say. Now he's just being repetitive. And I'm not going to finish it. So I rarely finish business books, but I start a lot of them. Rework is something you'll start and finish in 3 hours. It's a series of 88 essays, each a page or two each, with a bunch of illustrations trying to hammer the point home about each essay. And you'll get through it and you'll get back to work. And that's really the point. It's like you're supposed to read this book, get some ideas, think about some things differently. You may not agree with all of it, and that's totally fine. You may agree with none of it, in fact, but at least hopefully it'll make you think. And then you'll be done with it, on a flight, and over a couple lunches, and you're done, or on the train on the way to work, and then you're done, and you can get back to work. And I just think that's a really important thing. And I hope more business books down the road focus on a shorter format, and don't try and hit you over the head with ideas that take 2 or 3 or 4 weeks to get through, because I just don't think a lot of people end up finishing them. They're all busy, and who has time to go through that? Unless you're like a professional interviewer or someone who really has to read all these books, or someone who sells this sort of information, it's very hard for most people, I think, to find the time to finish these business books. So we want to write one that's short and easy to read and get through it quickly. So that's the one thing I'll leave you with in terms of rework. But in general, I think the last thing I guess I'll say is that less is always an option. I think a lot of people forget that less is always an option. People will say, God, I've got all this stuff to get done. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And like my answer is just do less of it. Cut it in half. Don't take on so much stuff. You can say no. All this, you can always do less. It's always an option. And I just don't think enough people think about that. And they're always looking for the next system to solve their problems and all this stuff, when really the way to solve the problem is to not have it in the first place. And a great way to do that is just to take on less stuff and make less commitments, or fewer. It's actually technically fewer, I guess. Fewer commitments, and don't string yourself out on all these different things you want to do. Just do less of them. And I think you'll find that things will free up for you, and you'll be able to breathe again, you'll be able to think again, and it really does work. So that's what I'll leave people with.
Awesome. Great stuff. Jason, thank you so much. And to all of our listeners, give me your feedback on this interview. Buy the book. The illustrations alone are worth it, and like you said, Jason, it's very short chapters, very easy to read, and that's why it's been one of the very best and most useful books that I've read in years, and I've been recommending it to everyone. I've had everyone in my company read it, and I would recommend any entrepreneur out there not only read this book, but get it for your team, and take it seriously, because it's a great book, and the advice is great, and so are the tools at 37 Signals. So until next time, thank you so much, and thanks again, Jason. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
Hello, this is Joe Polish. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this interview. I hope you found it very useful. Please give me your feedback on all of the interviews that you listen to. I'd love to hear your feedback so we can always deliver a great program for you. Our website is www.joepolish.com, and we also have a Joe Polish Recommends section, so you can take a lot of the ideas and concepts that you hear on my Genius Network interview series and apply them to your business and find vendors and resources. You can go to joepolish.com to find that information and click on the Joe Polish Recommends section. And also, if you would like to find out about more interviews and invest in more useful Genius Network series interviews, go to www.geniusnetwork.com. Thanks, and eat your competition alive.